I'm Charles Ross. I'm a student pilot at Hillsborough Aero Academy, and this is a quick video for my fellow beginner pilots out there, going over one of the first things that you'll learn when you start preparing for cross-country flight planning as a VFR private pilot. And that is going to be diversions if you want in your flight plan. So diversions can happen for a whole number of reasons. You're flying along, you're doing your own thing, you're feeling good, you get that cross-country solo time done, you're having the time of your life, and all of a sudden, bada bing, bada boom, your arrival airport gets covered in fog, it goes IMC. Well, you are not up to instrument rating just yet. You will be, but you're not there yet. So what are you gonna do? Well, there's a few different options, and those are gonna be what we go over today. And those are what we're gonna be talking about today when we look at VFR diversions. I'm sorry if it's a little small, but I'm doing the best I can. So, today's flight, we're going to be flying from McMinnville Municipal, Kilo Mike Victor, to Scappoose Industrial Airport, Kilo Sierra Papa Bravo. And we're flying in our nice Cessna 152s, which are what we generally fly here at HA. So we take off out of McMinnville, usual departure to the north. We're flying straight out, we're flying along, and something goes amiss. When we did our weather briefing before we took off, it was all VFR, it was all looking good. There were a little bit of weather off into the northeast, but it looked good. Well, in the time, I would say 45 minutes or so it takes to fly from McMinnville to Scappoose. Well, this weather came in. Now McMinnville is IMC. In fact, I'll do you one better. It's dropped to low IFR. Let's say the ceilings are at like 300 feet. I don't know, less than a statute amount of visibility and light rain, fog. So we can't go there. It's not going to work. It's not safe, and it's illegal. We don't have a rating, so we got to divert. Now, the first thing we could do is, and this depends on a couple factors, we could turn around. Now, whether or not it's advisable to turn around depends on a few things. Firstly, of course, your fuel. You need to assess your fuel situation, see if you can come back. Generally speaking, if you're within about a third or so of your flight out, it would be a good idea to turn back around and come back. That's why, of course, aircraft have the extra fuel. Here at Hillsborough Airport, our SOP is an extra hour of fuel. Some schools do it differently. Some schools just do the bare minimum of what the FRAM says we have to use. But here at HA, we use an extra hour of fuel. So even if we're all the way over here, we could still return to McMinnville if we wanted to. However, let's say that for whatever reason, we don't want to go back to McMinnville. Maybe we don't feel comfortable flying back. Maybe, for some reason, McMinnville also drops to IMC. I don't know how, but stranger things have happened. Now, we cannot go back. So we're right here, and we decide we need to divert. We're going to divert to Hillsborough Airport, Kilo, Hotel, India, Oscar. Now, there is a simple and pretty easy to remember acronym that I've used, that my CFI taught me, that will show you the best way to divert. And that acronym is that far. Now, what is that far? Well, it is, number one, turn. You are going to turn the approximate heading of the diversion airport. Now, before you take off on any distance flight, you should have alternate airports mapped out and planned. And if you're in my case, I tend to write down the frequencies for ASOS or CTAF or ATIS, towered, untowered, whatever my alternates are, I like to write down and an e-board and take it up with me. Now, we'll just assume that you're smart and you watch this video, so you do it. So you want to turn the approximate heading of the airport. Now, how do you know the approximate heading of the airport? Well, let's say you don't write down your alternates. If you have an iPad, something like ForeFlight, you can type an airport code in, or you can pull out a sectional chart, find the nearest airport, and you should be able to, if you have ForeFlight and you have the Bluetooth feature enabled, you should be able to figure out with the feature on ForeFlight how to turn the approximate heading. And if I can, I will try to put something up on screen here giving you an example. Now, you turn the approximate heading of where you need to go. The next thing you're going to do is find the exact heading. The original turn got you in the right direction. This is going to get you to the runway. So you figured out your heading, you figured out the direction you need to go, the next thing you're going to want to do is figure out altitude. You need to know what the pattern altitude is. Generally speaking, most airports I've seen are about 1,200 feet pattern altitude, but you need to check. So you can check the pattern altitude at the airport in a number of different ways. You can check it again on ForeFlight. I always recommend ForeFlight. You need to have it. If you don't, well, you should get it. It's pretty cheap. It'll save you a lot of hassle. But there's a myriad of ways you can figure out pattern altitude. This is another one of those things, like the airport codes, frequencies, and the such, that you should figure out before you take off. Just a word of advice. So you figured out the pattern altitude. Next thing you're going to want to figure out is the time en route, the ETA. You want to know how long it's going to take you to get from where you are to where you need to be. Now, this, again, if you got ForeFlight, will save you, give you some time. The other way you could do it, and something that our aircraft have, is if your aircraft has a GPS on it, there's typically a mode in which you can type in the airport code and it'll generate a straight line from your present location directly to there. And in most of these GPSs, there should be a way you can go into the settings and you can actually see an ETA. Next, fuel. Now we touched over this a little bit a couple minutes ago, but you want to check, again, you want to make sure that your fuel level is enough to make it from where you are to where you need to go. Because an alternate is not much of an alternate if you can't get to it. You know, we can divert from here over the mountains to Hillsboro, but if we wanted to divert to, I don't know, way down to Kilo Charlie Victor Oscar Corvallis, you know, we're not going to be able to make it. So that's not going to happen. We don't have the fuel. So we want to make sure you have the fuel, and you want to figure out how much fuel you're going to burn on the way. So the way you can figure this out, generally, your POH will, for your aircraft, will say the amount of fuel burned per hour. So once you know your ET, just use a little bit of quick math to figure out your ET from your total fuel consumption an hour, and you can figure out how much fuel you're going to burn, so how much fuel you're going to have. The other reason you want to know, make sure you know your fuel, is if you're in a larger aircraft or you're built up in a lot of fuel, you want to make sure you are within your landing weight. If you're not, well, either burn a little bit of fuel, or if you have the ability to dump fuel, I wouldn't recommend it, but there are ways. Next, you want to figure out your arrival time. ETA. You would need to figure out what time you're going to arrive. This is very precedent if you have a flight plan, or it's very precedent if you want to just kind of get a mental picture of where you're going, of when you're going to arrive. It's always a good idea to know what time do you think you're going to be on the ground. If you're in communication with somebody at school, a dispatch, or somebody, a company, if you're a pilot, flying somebody else's plane, rental plane, it's always a good idea for them to know and for you to know what time you're going to be on the ground. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, you are going to want to revise your flight plan. Now, generally here at HAA, we don't have a lot of FAA issued flight plans when we're going on cross-country flights with our instructors. However, it's always an option. You can always do it, and it's always recommended. It's smart, it's a safe idea, and in case something happens, it lets rescuers know where you are. You need to revise your flight plan. You can contact flight services to this, or when you get on the ground at your alternate, give them a call, let them know, make sure they know you're safe, or Civil Air Patrol might be on your backside. So I would recommend it. Now, that is that far. It's a simple acronym, pretty easy to learn. Turn the approximate location of the airport, find the exact heading, find the pattern altitude you need to get down to, and also keeping in mind you need to plan your descent, so make sure you know what your approach is going to be. You need to find your ETA, time en route, your fuel, your arrival time, and if you have a flight plan, revise it. Now, there is another thing to touch. So let's say we followed that far. Now, we followed that far. We are en route to Hillsboro Airport. Here's Hillsboro Airport here. We're, I don't know, right here. This is generally the typical entry into Hillsboro Airport for a lot of us entering from the northwest. There's a city here, Forest Grove. Put a little tree for my shitty tree, but it's a tree. For Forest Grove. And typically we overfly Forest Grove before tower turns us on a downwind approach for typically runway 31 left or 31 right, but Things can change based on the wind. You might get 1-3 left, might get 1-3 right, might get runway 2, might get runway 20. There's a few options to choose from here at Hillsborough Airport. It's a bit of a bigger field, second biggest in Oregon. That's a fact for you. So you're beginning your approach. What do? Well, you're going the approximate heading, you figured out the pattern altitude, and let's say you're a good few minutes away. I would say you're about 10, 12 nautical miles. We'll go with about 12 nautical miles since it'd be about safe. Once you're about 12 nautical miles away, you're going to want to turn on to ATIS. It could be ATIS, ASOS, AWOS. All depends on what airport you're flying into, towered or non-towered. It's a little bit easier if it's towered because you have people on the ground that can help you out. But if it's not towered, well, it's always a good idea to listen to ATIS, ASOS, AWOS. Next thing you're going to want to do is once you get the information, weather information, that's important because if it's a non-towered airport, that'll tell you which runway you're coming in on or what runway you're most likely coming in on. So the next step here is going to be pretty much the same basic thing, but it can be done two different ways if it's a towered or non-towered airport. So we'll get T for towered, U for untowered here. If it's a towered airport, next thing you're going to do, you're going to contact the tower frequency, and you're going to advise them that you're wherever you are relative to the airport. In this case, Hillsborough Tower, Cessna 89er 226, 1200 over Forest Grove, inbound for a full stop with information Charlie. So there we go. And they'll typically, like I said, turn us on to a left downwind for runway 31 left. So let's say we get cleared for left downwind for 31 left. So we enter the downwind and we divert on in. But let's say that for our example here, we are not going to Hillsborough Airport, but instead we diverted to, I don't know, let's see here. What do we got? I know. We diverted to a random untowered airport. We'll call it Kilo Foxtrot Uniform Kilo. I'm not that mature. So we're going to Kilo Foxtrot Uniform Kilo Airport in Oshkosh B'gosh, Winnipeg, or Wisconsin. It's untowered. Little two-directional runway. It's got runway, 3-1 and runway 1-3. There we go. That's simple enough. So we got runway 3-1, runway 1-3. After we listen to the ASOS, let's say the ASOS says winds are 180 at 5 knots. So 180 at 5 knots would tell us that most likely the runway we're going to be landing on is runway 13. Now, some people, not a lot, but some people would just take that in, take CTAF, and start their approach on into the 45-degree left downwind and pop on into runway 13. However, you can't do that. What you should do, it's a non-towered airport. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to next contact the CTAF. You're going to advise CTAF that your traffic is your position. I guess let's call it Fun Airport. Fun traffic, Cessna 89er 226 is 6 miles north of the field, 1,300 down to 1,200. Going to enter 45-degree left downwind runway 13 for a full stop. Fun tower or Fun Airport traffic. So you gave your announcement. But next thing you're going to also want to do, even before that, and I would recommend this to be done about the 12-mile rate out too as well. You're going to want to listen in, and you're going to want to listen to monitoring the frequency. You want to hear what the other aircraft are using, because the ASOS might say the winds are more favorable for 13, but maybe the ILS approach for Kilo Foxtrot Uniform Kilo is on the approach end for runway 31, and you got a Learjet coming into runway 31. Well, that tells you that if you fly runway 13, you're going to have a bad time. You want to listen to that, because if that Learjet's coming in, then you're going to want to take runway 31. Or if there's a couple aircraft in the pattern. If there's nobody in the pattern, go with whatever the winds are favorable. If there's aircraft in the pattern, whatever the aircraft in the pattern are using, that's one you want to use. In this situation where we're using the opposite runway of the one most favorable for landing, you could always discuss it with the traffic in the pattern and see if they're willing to change. Or in this situation, and this is based on something that really did happen to me, you have the jet coming in on an ILS approach to runway 31 there. You want to go to runway 13. You're the only aircraft around, and fuel's not an issue. So what are you going to do? Well, maybe communicate with the pilot of the Learjet, circle around outside of the airport, wait for the land guy to come down, do his thing. Once the area is clear, then if you're the only aircraft in the pattern, keep advising the frequency. You can come in and land at runway 13. Simple as that. So that is, in a nutshell, how to handle diversions as a VFR pilot. Moral of the story, you want to plan before you go. Make sure you have your alternates. It's a good idea to have a vague familiarization with the alternates, even if you haven't been there. You want to figure out the traffic pattern, the pattern altitude, frequencies you're going to need, and it's also a good idea to figure out the runways. Obviously, take a look at the sectional chart before you go, but that's common sense, and I'm sure you all are doing that anyway. It's also a good idea, as I mentioned, always make sure your weather's brief, your weather's current, and always keep track of the weather before your departure. That would be for another video, but that's always a good idea. And finally, but of course, always make sure to monitor the radios, especially when you're going into an untowered field. Safety is paramount, and if you ever feel unsafe, or you ever feel unsure, or you ever feel like something doesn't seem right, you can always go around, and you can always circle and wait. Or if you need help, there's a lot of people out there who are able to help you. Till next time, I'm Charles Ross from Level Off Films. Thank you for watching, and have a great rest of your day.